Welcome back. You're listening to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today we are talking about young adults, and we're going over a list of, I think you said the 5 stresses or worries of young adults.
Young adult worries, stresses. Number 5 was big hopes and aspirations. You talked about how you have that belief that you're something, you're special, and you want to contribute to the world, and you want to do it in your own special way, with your own unique degree or talent or passions. Number 4 is a wanderlust. You guys are wanderlust beyond belief. You have this deep desire or intense desire to travel, and whether you want to study abroad or take a gap in between years and go on, trips or a mission to experience other places other than home or college or your hometown. So you kind of want to, flee the nest, so to speak. And then number 3 was that you're forever broke. No matter how hard you work, attempting to save as much as you can, somehow you always seem to be broke anyways. And number 2 is living young, wild, and free until you get home. And what it says is that we come and go as we please, eat ice cream for breakfast, make late night food runs, and watch Netflix all day without getting the stink eye from anyone. And as soon as a break rolls around, it's time to work and get back to all the money that you've spent and save more for the next coming year. So apparently it sounds like, when you're away at college or when you're out on your own, you can just kind of be your own boss, be your own, your own adult. And then when you come home, you're probably getting, stuff from your parents going, hey, now what? When are you gonna find yourself a job? And now all of a sudden the pressure starts to come back when you've been flapping your own wings and making your own choices, and now all of a sudden you come back, parents now start to treat you like that little kid again, rather than giving that space for you to just continue to choose as an adult on your own.
Yeah, I think it's funny, and Andrew, you could probably attest to this because you went to college, so grab your mic in case I ask you a question. But I think what happens is parents, all of a sudden their kids turn 18 and they expect them to all of a sudden be adults and take care of themselves, go to school on their own, dorm, and be able to do everything. And as soon as they come back home, want to treat us like babies again, as if they didn't just send us off for 4 years.
Well, how did you feel when you would come back from college or take breaks, and it's like you've been independent for 2 or 3 months or 5 or 6 months, and all of a sudden now we're asking or treating you a certain way, and you're kind of going, wait a minute, when I'm over there, I have this certain independence and I'm thinking for myself and I'm making my own choices. I come here and it's like I turn 12 again.
Well, for me, it was kind of like when I was at home, if I would come home like on the weekends or like from between school, I felt like everyone was being so nice to me, maybe because they miss me.
We did miss you.
And they'd be so nice. I was like, this is weird. And then when I came home and I was like, you know what, I'm going to move back home. I was all happy. And then I got home and everyone treated me before, like when I was in high school. Yeah. And I was like, okay,
we don't
guys,
miss you anymore.
What happened?
That didn't last too long. Yeah. I have exactly that, where I went to college, I had my own apartment, ate whatever I wanted, did whatever I wanted, went out, and it felt great not to check in with anybody or saying, can I do this, or where are you going, who are you going with? I just went.
Yeah, because out of sight is out of mind.
Nice.
It was because out of sight is out of mind. Like, I don't know that you're out till 3, 4 in the morning, partying or doing whatever. So if I don't know that. And then when you come home, right?
And then it was, where are you going? Who are you doing? I'm like, I'm old. I'm 20-something right now. I'm just going with my friends and then taking out the trash, doing all this. I'm like, why am I here right now?
Why am I still doing this? Yeah, and what's funny is there was a point where when I was leaving and Dad, I called you and I said, I need to move my stuff out. I need to move my bed out of the apartment. I need a truck. Can you borrow a truck and help move me out? And you said, yeah. So that day when I knew you were coming and everything was all packed up, I was staring at the apartment like, this is it. This is like the last time for a long time before I'm going to have my freedom back, before I'm going to be able to go grab a sandwich in the middle of the night without saying, hey, I'll be right back. So I was kind of like, I literally did that typical thing like in the movies where you take one last breath as you walk out the door and close it behind you all dramatically, because that's what I needed to just finally say, like, okay, you got to go back and you can't act the way you've been acting these last couple months or whatever. You can't just all of a sudden think that you're going to go home and they're going to treat you the same. They're going to leave you alone, essentially.
But I think it's more of a respect thing. It's more of a courteous thing. Like, hey, I'm not going to be home tonight, or I'm going to come in late. It's because it's more about, like, for us, it's more about, you live with us, and if we don't hear from you, we want to know that you're safe. When it's out of sight, out of mind, if to us it's like no news is good news.
Right.
But when you're right there and we're used to talking to you every day and all day long, is checking in, checking out. Look, I had to go through it too, being married to your mom. You know, I was used to going out and doing what I wanted. Once I got married, it was like, hey, I used to get scolded and go, hey, you can at least tell me that you're not coming home or you're coming home late or whatever it was. And it was like, wait a minute, you know, are you my mom and all that kind of stuff. But it took me a while to realize that, no, it's a common courtesy thing to say, hey, I'm running late, or don't stay up for me, I'm going to be home late, and that kind of stuff. It's just more sharing with each other and communicating.
And I don't know if, Andrew, you experienced this because you probably lived with boys, but living with girls, if I was gone, my roommates would text me, where are you? When are you coming home? Are you coming home tonight? I was like, are you serious? Are you my mom? But after a while, I learned that either they're worried about me, that something happened, or they're just curious to see, or maybe they want to hang out too. So I would always have to check in with them. Like we had a group chat where we would just say, hey, not coming home tonight. Hey, won't be home.
You want to know the
late.
real reason why they were texting you? Because the day that we moved you in, when you weren't there, I looked at them all and I gave them that eye, and I was like, you better watch my daughter. And so that's why they were on you like that, because they didn't want Mr. Urbina to come down, you know, and go, hey, you know, she got kidnapped. It was on your watch. What happened? So, you know, that's cool to have friends like that looked after each other, and it should be like that. It should, because you see all those horror stories where college dorms, the girl goes missing and the friends are like, I don't know, she just does her own thing, rather than, hey, let's look out for each other.
Yeah, and you know what? I think one thing too is we all grew to be each other's family during that time.
Right,
we were all scared and we were all alone, and all we really had was each other. And even though mom and dad were an hour drive away, it was not the same. It's completely different. I know you went to school further, Andrew, but I was only like an hour away, and I felt like I was in another world. Like,
yeah, I was all the way up north, so a couple hours away, but I was by myself. I never had a roommate or anything, so I lived that apartment life. I had my own apartment, studio apartment, so I had that luxury of, this is my own space.
Were you scared? Were you scared of being on your own for the first time?
Yeah, because up until this point, my parents were doing the laundry and all this.
Right.
And all I had to do was take out the trash and tell them where I was.
You had never experienced summer camps, like going away?
No,
and that kind of thing?
well, summer camps, but nothing more than like a week. If
okay,
that.
Got it.
So this was you're basically thrusted, you're doing all college stuff, but you're basically living in your own apartment and all that. So when I went back home, it was a shock, like, oh my gosh, I'm back here. So then that next couple of years was, I really want that back. So I'm going to go back, and then I moved out.
So just out of curiosity, for the parents that are listening that have kids that are away, either living in a different town or away for college, what advice would you give them from the young adult perspective? You know, would it be like, hey, chill out, or hey, give us a space? What advice would you give the parent that is missing you and you know, loves you to death and wants to make sure you're okay, and maybe might be hovering a little bit too much, or a little bit still too controlling?
I think if you give them their space, if you give us our space, we will come back on our own. You know, we check in. So there would be times where I wouldn't hear, you guys probably didn't hear from me for a couple weeks, or I mean, probably like 2 weeks. And then I would say, I should check in with my parents. Hey, love you guys, miss you. I'll be home next weekend or in a couple weeks or whatever.
And so, what's amazing was in those 2 weeks, me and your mom were like, we're biting our nails, or, you know, she called you, no, she said, okay, you know. So, and I get it. And I had to trust in my heart that, hey, you know, because your mom would say, have you heard from your daughter yet? And I'll go, which one? She would go, you know which one. No, but I have to tell her, hey, just relax, give her space. And we had to trust exactly what you're saying. We had to trust that at some point, you on your own are going to go, hey, maybe I should just call my mom or my dad and let them know I'm okay. And exactly what we trusted happened. You would check in, right? But it's funny because just as we were thinking about it, like a couple days later, boom, the phone would ring, or you would check in. So
yeah, and one of the things my mom did, which was really cute without intruding, you know, just throwing herself into my life, was she would send me those little college care packages.
That's what I was going to say.
Those were so cute. She would send them for Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and they were just little packages that either sometimes she would put together and send, or she would do it from a website that specifically, they have websites that specifically send stuff to your kids in college. They'll send it directly to their dorm and everything, and they're
that's
super
cool.
Yeah,
I didn't
don't be that hovering parent Just like here's something and write what my mom did was wrote a handwritten note, because I had a great relationship with my parents, so I would contact them, but there would be a few moments where I wouldn't contact them for weeks, just because I was busy. But they would send that care package and it was personalized with things I liked from home that I couldn't get or anything like that.
That's cool.
Just homemade cookies and stuff like that, and with a handwritten note, and that was just okay. They took their time, they care, so let me check in, and then periodically I would check in from that. But care packages are so money when it comes to that stuff.
It's like the perfect way to say, hey, I'm still here, I'm still your mother, and I still love you, without jumping in and saying, hey, how are you doing? Tell me everything that's going on at school. And, it wasn't so helicopter parenting that is kind of the reason why a lot of us run to schools so far, because we can live 15 minutes from you on campus at the closest school, but a lot of us apply to further schools specifically to go get that college experience, and not necessarily to run away from you guys. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's mostly that we want to be on our own and be independent. That's why a lot of kids, they'll only go an hour or two away. It's not like they go to a different country or a different state.
Yeah, and I think to me, it's normal. To me, it's normal to want to, flap those wings, whether you flap them and land, 2 miles away or 20 miles away. It's normal for kids to want to get out of the environment that which they grew up under, especially if it was under the regime of controlling parents, So it just depends. But it reminds me of a book I read called The Big Sun and the Little Sun. And I'll share it briefly. It's about this big bright sun that knows how bright it is and how amazing it is and how nurturing its light can be for the world, and it has its little son with it, and the sun meaning not a sun like my daughter's son, it's the sun in the earth, and the little sun doesn't know how bright it is because it's always being kind of in the shadows of the big sun. And so in order for the little sun to know how bright it is, it has to remove itself from your presence. And it reminds me of a young adult or, an 18 or 19-year-old that says, I don't know who I am because my identity has always been the son or daughter of Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. And so he or she needs to go and find a new environment where he or she can discover its own brightness, its own sun, its own greatness. And it's going to go through the struggles of ups and downs to figure out he or she is. And I think it's just a great analogy to describe what young people are trying to do, is to trying to figure out who they are and discover their own independence. Even if they fall 100 times, it's their process that they need to kind of go through.
Yeah, one little piece of advice that I could give to parents about, the hovering parenting is that when I went to school, I kind of didn't really notice that big of a difference because growing up I wasn't hovered on. My parents gave me freedom as long as I communicated. I had a lot of friends and roommates that had the opposite of that. They had parents that were on top of them 24/7. So that first year that they did go to school, they went crazy. They went wild. I don't even know if they went to class half the time. Like some of them at the end of the year, they were like, I'm on academic probation or I got kicked out. And it wasn't because they're not smart. It's because they spent too much of their time going crazy with the freedom because their parents never gave it to them. So when they had it, they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And I visualize, as you share that story, what I visualize is somebody that constantly gets starved and you're not feeding that person adequately in a healthy way. And so you starve people. And when they're starved, the very first chance they get on their own is they're going to go on a binge. They're going to overeat to the point where everything looks so delicious, and they're going to try to get as much food into them as they can, all the delicious goodies, and they're going to go on a week binge or a month binge. And that's a lot of the times what happens when they talk about binge drinking and binge partying when you're out in college. A lot of that is because they've been under the control or the thumb of their parents for such a long time that they can't wait to get out, because that's what they're looking forward to, rather than I'm going out to in a healthy way to figure out who I am and get my education and figure out, find my own light and all that kind of stuff. It's just two different contrasts.
Yeah, and one last thing I want to point out, that while your kids are in high school, the schools are teaching them, they're preparing them for college, they're preparing for the study, the work, but you as a parent need to be preparing them for college life. You need to be preparing them for being responsible and making the right decisions and balancing school and life at the same time, because they don't teach us that in school.
So what would you recommend? Let's say you were talking to the mother, father, or the parents of your roommates. What would you say to them if they were listening?
I probably
What advice would you give them?
If they could do it all over again.
For your friend. Like, say your friend was, 12 or 13 years old. What advice would you give them so they set themselves up to win when they leave to college?
I probably would have had them for the last couple years, at least through high school, let her go out with her friends and teach her how to communicate. Give her a cell phone, because that was one of the things. She didn't get a cell phone until she was going to college or her senior year in high school. So until she could pay for it for herself. So it was kind of like, if she, give her a cell phone, let her go out with her friends, teach her how to communicate. Tell her, you can go out as long as you communicate, or we're going to take the cell phone away.
So use the cell phone as a training, so that at some point she transitions into college or leaving home with already the habits of knowing how to communicate.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they didn't really let her go out or have any type of a social life was because they didn't know what she was doing, or they were afraid. Their fears came up that she was going to be doing something that they didn't know. But as long as she was communicating, it's kind of like, if you know your parents are right there and you have to communicate what you're doing. And not that it's hard to lie about what you're doing, but it's more challenging to go out of your way and do something crazier. You're not going to drive to Vegas when you have to be home at 11. So it's kind of like, with those kinds of responsibilities and consequences that come with them if you don't abide by them, getting your phone taken away, getting grounded, not going out with your friends. It was kind of like, if they just gave her a little taste of what it was going to be like, I think she would have been, even if it was 2% more prepared for school, that would have been 2% better than what she went in knowing.
Awesome. That's great advice. And then for me, I think the advice that I would give for parents, I'm actually going to give it to myself, as though there's the younger version of myself, when my kids are coming back home for summer break. I get to remind myself that they have been training themselves to live on their own, and they have been going through the ups and downs of figuring out what they can do, what they can't do. They've been testing the waters a little bit, or crossing that blurred line a little bit, and figuring out how to navigate life on their own and being responsible. And so I got to remind myself, when they come home, to not stomp all over that, to not discredit that by treating them like they're 12 years old again, and be more mindful of that, and maybe sit down and have a conversation. And we were always good at that, is sitting down and having conversations like, okay, now that you're home, let's go over some ground rules. Not ground rules like rules that you have to follow, like I'm going to be a controlling parent again, but let's go over some ground rules, or let's call it framework. Let's create the framework for you entering back to the house, our home, for summer, so that we set you up to win, so that we continue to fan that flame for you, so you can stay being independent under our roof, and have a dialogue about it, and ask what kind of support you need from me, so that we can continue to support you in that, so that we don't come off as overbearing, or have you can't wait to run out again to go back to college because you had a horrible summer back with us, because you made up a story that we were treating you like a kid again.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I know that for me, I left school. I came home for the summer, and I was kind of debating it in the first place. And I came home, and it wasn't so bad, so I stayed. But for me, I realized that what I thought I was chasing by going to school and leaving, I really was never going to get there necessarily. That whatever it was I was chasing, I could get here. That I could find the knowledge, the strength, whatever, to do whatever I wanted in the world. I didn't need to be away from home doing that. And a lot of me, that's what I was trying to do. I'm going to be honest. When I was in high school, I was like, oh, I can't wait to go to college just to get out of here.
And as much as your mom and I knew that, we had to, and I'm sure it came out a few times, and I apologize if it came out, but the wise parent, the wiser part of me back then knew and should have known that I had to let you go through that process on your own anyways, and trust that you'll have your own awakening, and that you'll come to that realization and have that breakthrough all on your own without me having to try to muscle it in your head or try to jam it down your throat or force you to see it that way. I had to kind of just let you run that course, no matter how much money it cost us for that college experience. And it was valuable. It was worth it.
Yeah. And, the more you force it, the more we're going to resist
That's
it.
right.
So definitely keep that in mind next time. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back. You're listening to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today we are talking about young adults, and we went over some of the top 5 stresses or worries that we as young adults have. So we have one more left, but before we jump into it, I want to go over just the last 4 that we said. You could go ahead.
Yeah, last 4 was big hopes and aspirations, the wonderless beyond belief, forever broke. No matter how hard you work, it seems like you're always broke. And then 2 is living young and wild and free until you come back home, and all of a sudden you get treated like a kid again. And then number 1 is going to be dating. A lot of young adults have yet to experience healthy romantic relationships. Unfortunately, this is an especially difficult feat if you don't have healthy role models. There's so many relationship issues that can sabotage your relationships, like codependency, not realizing one's worth and value, or being in an abusive relationship, whether physical or emotional, love addiction, love avoidance, and confusing love with sex. It can all be a struggle. And so I think dating is probably apparently the number 1 struggle, issue, or concern that young people deal with.
I feel like it's probably been the number 1 issue for every young adult ever, even the even the baby boomers and Generation X. It's not something that's particularly new or anything, but I think you're right. For us, dating has changed so much. I only know dating based on technology. I don't know what dating was like before. I don't know what writing letters was like. I don't know how all those cute romantic things that I see in the movies. I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with people sending me a message on Facebook and me going, ew, I'm not responding to that. Delete.
Or text messaging.
Yeah. So for me...
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that you've never had a young person your age come up to you and flirt with you, or
I'm saying
ask you to go on a date, or is that what you're saying?
I'm saying yes, I have, but I'm saying the more often than not, 90% of the time, it starts off with somebody sending me a message or a text, and it's someone I know already. So I'm already friends with them on Facebook, or I'm already friends with them in real life, and they have my phone number or whatever.
So it's a safe way to test the waters to see if they're going to get rejected or welcomed, or
yes,
okay.
Which I don't personally like, and I don't know how, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't personally like it. So for me, I feel like in high school, I would always make people feel awkward. Like they would ask me something, and I'd be like, "Are you asking me out on Twitter?" And I put a question mark, and they'd be like, "No, I just wanted to." So I feel bad, and then it's just it's a weird thing, I think, for us still. Even though it's normal for us, it's still weird. It's still awkward. It's still uncomfortable. When if someone walks up to you and flirts with you and asks you out in person, I guess, quote unquote, the normal way, it's still weird, it's still awkward, but it doesn't really give you like a negative feeling about it.
But what you're saying to me is that you're just turned off by it in the form of having it go through technology, having it be through a social media setting, rather than somebody having the courage to come up to you and either ask you out or kind of hint towards the possibility of, hanging out with them.
Yeah, I think, like I said, to us, it's normal. So we just do it, or you just go along with it because that's what's normal. But for me, it felt weird, or it felt almost like unnatural. It didn't feel like something I wanted my relationship to feel like.
I remember the first time that I kind of got a glimpse of that. I was working with another friend of mine. He's a coach, and we were at the end of an event, and he's in his 30s, he's a young 30-year-old, and we were having lunch, and I guess he was kind of flirting with the waitress, and he asked her, he goes, "Can I Facebook you or friend request you," or whatever it was, and then when she said yeah, and then she walked away, I said, "What's that all about?" And this is when Facebook was like just first, hitting the scene, whatever.
What's that all about?
I go, "What's that all about?" And he goes, "Oh, it's the new social app where you can like Facebook each other and friend requests, and it's kind of, you go through a process of looking at their stuff, and it's like this little buffer zone where I can look at your photos, see how you respond, see how you're acting, to see if we can now take it to the next level, which is ask each other on a date." And I was like, and this is like, I don't know, 12 years ago or 8 years, however long ago it was. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, that's really safe, because the traditional way is to just say, "Hey, can I get your number?" And then you call each other and you're on the phone, and you got to do it the so-called legit way, not the new age way.
I think that idea sounded good, the buffer part, like, oh, you get to know a little bit about them, you see their pictures, you see what their interests are.
Yeah, and then you could decide whether I'm going to ask you out or not.
Yes, but that's not what people do now. They don't look at, that's not what they do anymore. They're not using it the right way, is what I'm trying to say.
The right way.
We only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to invite everybody to listen to a new show. It's called The Unreality Show. It's every Friday right after our show. So stay tuned. They talk about some of the reality shows, the dysfunctions, and all of life's lessons that you can learn in those shows. Again, it's called The Unreality Show. It's on right after our show. So stay tuned. Today they're going to talk about The Bachelor.
The Bachelorette.
Okay, more interesting. All righty. Thank you so much for joining us today on My Conscious Dad. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. right here on your hometown station, KHTS.